from yesterday. Oh.
Wait a minute. Right. Good evening. Welcome to the Minneapolis Ward 5 City Council Candidate Forum. And thank you to you who are here tonight. Thank you for your flexibility in not coming last night, because it would have been a real scorcher last night. But we appreciate you coming on this beautiful summer night. My name is Pam Talene, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters Minneapolis. I am not a constituent in Ward 5. I'm excited to be moderating tonight because I did this 2 years ago, and it was so cold we were covering ourselves up with blankets. So you never know in Minnesota what you're going to get. This forum is sponsored by the Northside Residents Development Council, NRRC, Heritage Park Neighborhood Association, Harrison Neighborhood Association, and the League of Women Voters Minneapolis. The views expressed are those of the candidates and not those of your sponsors. Neither the League of Women Voters or its co-sponsors endorses candidates or a political party. The League of Women Voters is an organization that's more than 100 years old, not our members, just the organization itself. It's nonpartisan, and it does not support or oppose candidates or political parties. The League encourages its members and all people to be involved in the political process. We encourage informed and active participation in government. We welcome all who are interested in learning about a variety of subjects to join our organization. Visit lwvmpls.org to learn more about the League. We're holding this forum for voters to hear from the candidates and to compare their ideas. This forum is being held in front of a live audience at Farwell Park, that's you, and it's also being live streamed to YouTube. Thank you to MCN6 for the production and the recording of this event. We ask that no video recordings be made other than by the media. Please remain as quiet as possible while the candidates are speaking so that everyone can hear each of the candidates' answers and hear the discussion that goes on. We ask you to hold applause until the end of the forum so the candidates have a maximum time to respond to the questions. We do have quite a few questions. And finally, please silence all of your electronic devices. You probably know this, but I think it's always interesting to hear about where you live. Ward 5 is considered one of our most culturally and economically diverse wards in the city. Its history is rich in community engagement and power. Composed mainly of residential neighborhoods, it's situated on the western shore of the Mississippi River and includes Theodore Wirth Regional Park and the neighborhoods of Harrison, Hawthorne, part of Jordan Park, near North, part of North Loop, Sumner Glenwood, and part of Willard Hay. 3 candidates are running for the Ward 5 City Council seat. All of the candidates were invited to the forum and all agreed to come for both nights. As a reminder, Minneapolis local elections have ranked choice voting in the primaries, but we are not having a primary this year. This year you will have the power to rank your candidates in order of preference on November 7th. For all races with more than 2 candidates, you should consider not just your first choice, but your second and third choice. And remember that in all cases, when you vote, you can always have a write-in as well. Time limits for all the comments will be strictly enforced. In fairness to all the candidates and the audience, we ask that these limits be respected. Each candidate will have up to 2 minutes for your opening statements, and that will include a response to a question I will give you in just a minute. The moderator will then, will then ask questions from the live audience and those questions that have been emailed to the League prior to the event. And thank you, we already have a couple of questions from the audience, so don't be afraid to fill out the cards and bring them up to our question sorters over here. So we can address as many questions as possible in the time available, Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to answer each question. Candidates will also have 1 minute for their closing statements. We have timekeepers right in front. We're sitting in the front row so that each candidate can see them, and they will hold up a sign when you have 15 seconds left, and they will also hold up a stop card sign when your time is up. We ask that you finish your sentence and then pay attention to the stop sign. During the forum, we'll take these written questions from you, the audience, and volunteers will wander around, and if you just have a card, hold it up and they'll come and pick up your card. We ask that the questions be clear and pertinent to the issues at hand and made in the form of a question and not a statement. Questions must be directed to all 3 candidates. Questions that are hostile or of a personal nature will not be asked. We may consolidate some questions for the same general topic, so don't feel bad if your exact wording isn't used. And finally, all questions that are submitted are the property of League of Women Voters Minneapolis. Okay, for your opening statement, gentlemen, I forgot to introduce you to the 3 candidates today. Just a minute here. I want you to meet your 3 candidates. They are in alphabetical order, which will just wave when I say your name: Jeremiah Ellison, Victor Martinez, and Philip Peterson. And I apologize for that. I had it highlighted on my other copy. Okay, so for your opening statement, the question is, why are you running for Ward 5 City Council seat, and what are your qualifications? And the men drew numbers at the beginning of the evening, and so they will start with 1, 2, and 3. And Philip, you will go first.
Good evening. My name is Philip Peterson. Let me adjust this. And I am running for City Council. I'm going to say first my qualifications. Being a resident, being a renter.
They want you to speak up.
Oh, can you hear me? I'm sorry. Being a resident, being a renter, being someone that takes the community seriously, that takes the issues of the community seriously, pretty much willing to even lay down myself for the help of any of my neighbors in any situation. I'm not a Minneapolis native. I'm a transplant from Washington, D.C. I've been here for about 10 years, going on my 11th year. And I've seen the highs and the lows of the city, and the highs were amazing, and I know we can go higher, and the lows have been like kind of detrimental. The possibility of being a food desert, the possibility of not having adequate police force, being down like 80% of the force needs, kids running wild in certain situations, and just a lot, just issue after issue that weren't here a couple of years before. There were certain issues, but I'm running because I feel that I, with the help of everyone, have ideas, plans, and I think we can all do it together. I would just need your help.
Thank you. Mr. Ellison.
Can you guys hear me? Good evening. Thank you guys for being here. My name is Jeremiah Ellison, and I'm the current Minneapolis City Council member representing Ward 5, which is where we are here and which is where most of you live. I've been serving in this seat going on 6 years now, and when I walked into City Hall, I walked into a context that saw North Minneapolis facing decades of disinvestment, decades of disengagement, and I knew that I didn't want to take the same amount of time to overcome a lot of the problems that we saw. I wanted to have a co-governance model. I wanted to have a collaborative model with my constituents, with my neighbors. The number one thing that I heard when I first started running for office was just all of the deficit that we possess here in North Minneapolis, what we don't have, what we lack, right? But I'm born and raised here. I know this community. And the thing that kept coming back to me was just how much we have, how much we have in ingenuity, how much we have in creativity, how much we have in resilience. And I wanted to tell that story at City Hall as well. And I think that it has been a long journey. There have been some things that I could predict, and there have been some things that I could not have predicted, right? Obviously, the murder of George Floyd, the uprising, the pandemic, which was economically devastating. And yet, I've leaned into policy.
Hello?
Sorry. Oh, okay. Sorry. Cut off for a second. And yet, I've leaned into policymaking with rigor to make sure that we can improve in all of the areas that I think we deserve to see improvement. I've worked on increasing housing options for folks. Not only just affordable housing, yes, affordable housing, but housing at all income levels. Working on things like economic growth, working on things like public safety, as well as climate justice. These are the things where I think we've made strides. I'm excited to talk to you guys about it tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez.
Hello, thank you, everybody. I have lived in North Minneapolis for almost 28 years now. I graduated from Patrick Henry High School down the road. I have a family here. I have children here. I got married on the north side. I bought a house on the north side. I bought a property on the north side. I pastor on the north side. I do community work on the north side. I really care about the north side. I'm very invested in it. This is where I'm raising my family. This is where I'm raising my children. And this is where I'm raising my dogs, right? And I really care as well, just like everybody here cares about this community. One of the reasons I'm running is because we continue to have an issue in our community where we're pushing a platform that was settled 2 years ago. This issue is about policing and the defund the police issue. Some people want to change the name of it, call it what it is, but that issue is now coming back again. We thought it was dealt with, but it keeps coming back, and I don't think it's a good idea. I believe in accountability. I believe in rebuilding trust. I believe in recruiting folks from the community. I believe in transparency. I believe in the ecosystem of what is public safety, and right now we don't have that. The ecosystem isn't working well. All you have to do is Google it, and you see in the last year and a half the headlines that are happening with public safety. So we have to bring it together. Number one. Number two, just like you all have seen many of our businesses leaving our community, there is nothing being done to bring back these key businesses. We lost all these, we lost Walgreens, we just lost a dollar store. We lost the only sit-down restaurant on Broadway, and we're going the wrong way. And what I want to do is be committed to you, and I commit that in my first term, I will bring us a mom and pop grocery store, and if I don't, I won't run again. That's how serious I'm about making the change in our community that we need. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will start with the questions, and as I said, quite a few of the questions were sent in early, and then we've already gotten quite a few from the audience, so we appreciate it. Is that close enough? Okay. We've divided the questions into general categories, and our first general category is policing and public safety. The first question is, the City Council approved the court-enforceable Minneapolis Police Department consent decree with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. What specifically should the City Council do to support the implementation and compliance of the agreement terms? And Mr. Ellison will start.
Thank you for the question. And so the city is actually under two consent decrees, one from the state, Minnesota Department of Human Rights, and one coming from the DOJ, the Department of Justice, right? And so we've gotten federal review and state review about how our public safety system works as it is. And so I think we need to do a couple of things. One is we have to comply with the consent decrees. And what does that mean? That means that we need to limit inappropriate uses of force. It means that we need to have some measures of accountability. It means that we need to improve policing as a service. Now, mostly that falls under the bucket of the mayor, right? That's law. But what can we do? Implementation of these consent decrees is going to be expensive, but it'll be more expensive the longer they go on. And when you look at some of these cities who have had consent decrees, they're going on 12 years, they're going on 15 years. And I think that we're looking at a 5-year timeline, and I want to do everything in my power to make sure that we continue that implementation and we wrap it up in 5 years. But I want to go a step further. And I want to make sure that we have a way to ensure that we do not slip back into old habits after the consent decree is over. That means that we're going to have to build up our audit department in order to ensure that level of accountability.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez?
I think I agree with just about everything our council member said. It's going to take a lot of money. And if you look at the other cities that have done this, it costs money. I believe that our public safety should be empowered with as much funds as possible to make these changes and transformation. But where I differ is that I believe public safety is really an ecosystem, that all parts must work together for it to work. And my opponent a couple of months ago voted against the MPD requesting federal funds for no other reason than he doesn't want them to have money. Our city and our taxes continue to go up the last few years, 6%, 5%, and we need more money into these departments that we know are going to cost us a lot of money. And so I support those departments, allow them to get the funds and look for the funds that they need to bring that kind of transformation into our community. And so that's one of the things that separate us between one of my opponents and not myself. I would not say that this is the mayor's job. I would say this is a team job.
It's law.
If I'm not in the same agreement and I'm not working together with the mayor and working as an adversary of the mayor, that doesn't work. And so I believe as a mayor, city council, we need to be lockstep every single step of the way. It's 5 years is a big stretch, and the only way you can do something like that is if you're united together. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
I agree also with my other two constituents, but I want to add to a little bit of what they said, and the things I agree with may not be exactly what was said. I do agree that there's ingenuity in the community, which is one of the reasons that I'm running. So with that being said, the ingenuity of handling this police issue, I think is almost elementary. I believe there's probably some reckless police spending, and then we are down about 80% of cops out of I think about 900. We only have about 300 and some cops patrolling the streets. Yes, they're very aggressive or have been aggressive. The look and the style of policing needs to change. Rather than defunding, we need to redistribute funds into areas and or create possibly a new type of officer, someone that specifically handles mental health issues, so that we're not bringing officers with guns into places. And we need to get back to community policing. I don't understand why we don't have a couple of officers living in our community that we know by name. That needs to change also.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question comes from our audience. Our streets are becoming increasingly more dangerous. I've seen bike paths added and stop signs removed. This has added to the problems. Some of our neighbors' suggestions are rejected but allowed in South Minneapolis. Why is that, and what do you plan to do about the bike paths? And we start with Mr. Martinez.
One of the most important things we need to do in our community when we hear about these issues is respond back to them. Talk about why things are happening the way they are happening. When I'm out there door knocking, when I'm out there talking to folks, I hear their concerns. I have messaged my council member, I've messaged the city, nobody responds back to me. And one of the problems is that there's a lot of lack of information because nobody responds back. That's why one of the things that I committed to is a 24-hour return, to return your messages, your email. I put even a challenge on my website. If you don't believe me and you want to take up the challenge, contacting me and our current council member and seeing who gets back to you, if at all. And so I think that we need to have standards as high as we have in South Minneapolis, but that is not the case. If you want to see what I'm talking about, I want you to go over to 4th Street, go around 22nd, go see what's going on over there. And you tell me if that's allowed in South Minneapolis. And right now, in the last few years, it has been allowed. If you want to know how bad it is and what is allowed here, just look behind McDonald's. Just look behind over there what's going on. And you'll know exactly that we're right now allowing things happening here that wouldn't be happening somewhere else. Safety, whether it's a bike lanes, whatever it is. And I completely agree with that. We're going the wrong way, and I would change that if I'm in office. Thank you.
Mr. Peterson?
The crime is also indicative of, once again, a lack of an active police force. One of the first things I would do is look into possibly expanding hiring, not lowering standards, but be more aggressive at getting officers to want to come to Minneapolis to be police officers after having such devastating national effect, global effect. There's a stain on the city that we need to remove. And it literally starts in the community, but it also starts with the city council, with the mayor, and putting an adequate force on the streets, and then also making sure that they just can't up and just leave. That means working with the police union to guarantee that if they have a contract with the city, just because the city isn't going the way they like, they can't just up and leave us, the citizenry, that they took a sworn oath to protect, unprotected. It's not cool, and it needs to stop, and it will stop.
Mr. Allison?
Speeding across the city, especially on the north side, is a huge issue. It's something that I'm looking to tackle. It's an issue I take incredibly serious. And so I want to talk about some of the things that I've done, and I also want to explain the problem a little bit. One of the things is that if you talk to Public Works, if you talk to my other council colleagues, you're seeing speeding, you're seeing crashes, you're seeing problems all across the city. That isn't to say that we are not struggling with it in North Minneapolis. We absolutely are. There's a corner right around on 12th and Thomas. We're working on getting a roundabout there to address some of the traffic solutions. And it's something that we've done in other parts of the north side. So safe routes to schools, you may notice that if you walk around North High or some of the other schools, that there's improved infrastructure to make sure that cars, things like roundabouts, narrower streets, to make sure that speedings can't occur. And in those areas, we have seen average speeds decrease. You're always going to have those, excuse my language, but those idiots who are trying to fly through a neighborhood. But if you build an environment that they cannot fly through, they will slow down. And so I want to see safe routes to schools, and I want to see it expanded so that it's not only around North High and Hall and schools like that, but that it's in every single neighborhood, especially near our parks. I want to make sure that we invest in better infrastructure. Also, a couple of years ago, there was the mayor, the council unanimously began an effort to reinstate our efforts to do traffic enforcement. The traffic, MPD had to. I'm being asked to stop, but hopefully we can increase. We can get another question so I can finish answering that question.
Okay, Mr. We finished that one. All right, the next question is, does the City Council have a role in supporting and monitoring the effectiveness of community groups who are working to improve public safety, prevent disturbances, and the need for emergency services? Mr.
Can you repeat that question one more time,
Yes.
please?
Does the City Council have a role in supporting and monitoring the effectiveness of community groups who are working to improve public safety, prevent disturbances, and the need for emergency services?
I would say yes. It's a community group. If their goals are positive, and what they're trying to do is not just enrich the community, but be like a positive force and get other people on that, yeah, that's a paramount thing for a councilman or any municipality where people live and there are communities. I'm rewinding real quick back to the traffic. Roundabouts, while they sound like they work, roundabouts aren't the answer. We need to first fix the streets and then put in other speed reducing obstructions, speed bumps, and then also for some of our deaf and impaired citizens, we need those signs up, especially where they live, with the speed bumps. I live on Irving. People fly up and down. My neighbor is deaf and cannot take her dog outside. That needs to change. Yes, community groups, come to my house. We'll barbecue. We'll sit down. We'll powwow. We'll get it done.
Thank you. Mr. Ellison?
Yes, I think it's really important. There has been a huge demand that we expand what it means to keep our neighborhoods safe, right? That means that as we're making investments in things like MPD, folks also want to see us make investments in the Office of Violence Prevention, behavioral health crisis, and these things. And I think that this question is really geared at the Office of Violence Prevention and the violence interrupters. And we've been monitoring their, what are they doing? They have a standardized training called the Blueprint Approved Institute. It comes out of the Cure Violence model. And so we try to make sure that we can measure their outcomes. What are they doing? Now, the programs aren't that old, right? You need at least 3 years, to see some of these programs, to see what their results are. But we are getting to see how many hours they're putting out, how many on the street, how many people they're interacting with. These are some of the things that we can begin to measure, and we have begun to measure. I think that we need to hold all systems accountable, right, in the city, and no group will be exempt from that. That includes these violence interrupters, but I also think we need to make sure that we're setting them up for success and not failure. We've also seen a huge desire for communities to say, hey, look, we don't want to go simply the Blueprint approved route. We've seen community groups saying we want to try and test our own methods as well, and I've been a leader in trying to fund those efforts across the city, but especially in North Minneapolis.
Mr. Martinez?
When we say the best measurements, I think the best measurements are you. What do you see out there? What are you experiencing? Now, I'll tell you what I'm experiencing. And we had a incident at North Commons, the pool. My family was there, I was there. We saw a situation escalate. I got up out of the pool, and there was a violence interrupter there. Very unaware of the understanding of the situation, what was happening. And when I got out of the pool, the young person punched the staff in front of the violence interrupter. And then the violence interrupter pushed them back and separated them, the young man and the group that he was with, threatening that they're going to come back, they're going to hurt them, and things like that. They go out. I'm thinking that the violence interrupter is going to go after them. He did not go after them to talk to them. In fact, when I got outside with my family, because they shut down the whole pool because of the incident, this young man and the group that he was with was in the car sitting there waiting. And then about 10 other violence interrupters showed up. And I'm like, okay, they're going to go talk to this young man in the group, so this could be resolved now. They did not. They didn't engage them. They went to talk to the other guy about what happened. That was it. That's not okay. When we go down on Penn, here in Penn and Plymouth at front of Wally's, see 10 guys, interrupters. Almost half of them are on their cell phone. That is not okay. You watch, you see, and that is the measurement that I would hold it up to.
Thank you. The next question. What is your position on requiring police officers to have their own liability insurance? And we start with Mr. Ellison.
It's a good question. This question has come up twice on the city council, one before I was in office and one while I've been in office. We have seen in the last 5 years, we've seen the city pay over $100 million in settlements in these abuse cases. We've seen over $20 million in other insurance payouts for officers. And so I think that the conversation is a worthwhile one. Now, what's the ultimate cost, right? We don't know. There's state preemption that prevents us from even being able to explore this idea. But certainly the system that we have is costing us tens and tens of millions of dollars every single decade. And so I think it's a worthy conversation. But my hope is that with the consent decrees, with federal oversight and state oversight, that a lot of the incidents that are creating these police misconduct cases that are costing you millions of dollars I'm hoping that we can start to resolve them because I think that that would end the conversation effectively. But if we can't see those issues resolved, I think people are going to want to see a different solution. They're going to want to see their tax dollars going to something other than just settling police misconduct cases.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez?
One of the issues that I have was talking about this is that we have way more victims of violence in our community. We have children. We have people that are trying to cross an intersection. They die. As a minister, plenty of times I've talked to people, gone to their house because it's a single mom, or the husband is the only breadwinner in the house and she's a stay-at-home mom, and he dies because of a car accident. That just happened a couple years ago with someone on the north side. I have an issue with that. You know that victims get nothing. Victims get almost little to no support, and we have them all the time. So yes, it costs money, but it costs people's lives, people's families, every single week in Minneapolis, every single month in Minneapolis. I'm not okay with that. I want the conversation to come around. What do we have for them? What systems do we have for those family members that lost someone because someone was driving recklessly in our community, or because they were shooting and our children were playing in the park or in the house and they got hurt? What do we have for them? Right now we have nothing. How do I know? Because I go look for help for them all the time. And we have other members doing it as well. So the reality is, a lot of that insurance idea, it's out of our hands. It's in the city. So I agree with our council member on that. But we need to talk about the victims. We need to talk about those that are being hurt every week, every month. Thank you.
Okay, well, now our next group of questions.
I don't think,
I'm sorry, Mr. Peterson.
It's okay.
I told you that would happen.
No, it's okay. I've been working in the heat too sometimes. Okay, liability insurance provided by the officers for themselves. We shouldn't be in a situation where we're talking about like a job provides insurance. We shouldn't be in a situation where we're talking about the police need to have liability insurance. They need to be trained better. They need to be held better accountable. The union needs to stop possibly curtailing. I don't know, but there's some type of disconnect where they're not wanting to adequately serve and they're wanting to be more forceful. But until the situation is fixed, quite possibly a partial, we don't want to see our taxes go up. We don't want to, again, see officers not want to come to the city because of things that are happening with the police force and with the city. It's really about not just the training, it's the culture. The culture needs to change. The police need to change. They need to change into something that's not something you fear when you see them, but rather you feel relieved when they're around. Again, community police, police that deal with mental health, police specifically for traffic, and then the ones that need to get the job done.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to some questions about housing. What is your position on regulating rent, and how do you think the City Council should proceed to address this? Mr. Martinez, you go first.
Well, I just wanted to make it clear. I think the question's asking about the rent control. I don't support it, and I don't support it because I don't think it works. There's nowhere that it showed that it's worked. My opponent has referenced cities where it's worked, but those cities have the highest homeless encampments. They have the highest rents, are the most expensive. And so if you're going to compare rent control to where it's working, that's a really bad idea because it's not working there. It's hurting the communities there. Just Google it. And so that's why I don't believe in rent control. Look, the reality is the north side is the most economical place to buy a home, and it's the cheapest place to rent an apartment. We have places here for $650 for studios, $650. It's a pretty good deal. There's a lot of mom and pop folks in the community that have spaces, and maybe even some of you have a duplex or have another building. And if you ask those folks that are in the community and have those spaces, they want to keep the rent as low as possible. Why? Because we don't want turnaround. I have a duplex myself. We want to keep our tenants happy. We want to take care of them. Now, if we have folks, organizations or businesses that are really abusive. I know some in Harrison happened over there. I think that we need to actually utilize our licensing to do something about it. Then what's the point of having licensing if nobody gets in trouble, right? And so that's what I would prefer to do. The north side doesn't need it. Would have the biggest increases of rent leading up to this, and it's already happening. Those conversations already being taking place, and I don't think it's a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson.
Well, I guess we're a slight bit of inexperienced might show. I mean, I'm a renter. I rent in a duplex. My rent is about $1,100 a month. I love it. I would like my rent to stay the same. Or if it did have to go up, it should go up by a nominal percent off of the original rent, maybe every 2 years. If the object or the ideal is to build communities and have people stay and not run them out by raising up the rent and doing things that increase the prices of living, especially when people may not have a workable living wage, and the reason they live on the north side is because the rent is reasonable, then reasonable things need to actually happen throughout all wards where that type of thing is. Not everyone has the ability to purchase a home, and I would just want to make sure that people could remain in their homes. So I'm not too caught up on rent control. That happens in New York, and that's kind of like, that's gone now. So that's not an option.
Mr. Ellison.
Thank you for the question. There are, researchers will tell you there are as many types of rent control as there are rent control policies around the country, right? Meaning that every city who has a policy usually ends up tailoring that policy to the specific dynamics in their city. Now, when you look at some of these places that have rent control, but still have out of rising prices and rents, the rising prices are happening in the non-controlled units. They're not happening because of the rent control policy. As a matter of fact, in those places where there's affordability, where working class people can still live, is in those rent controlled units. Now, we're dealing with a situation where maybe in the last 2 years, we've seen rents sort of stable out, right? But prior to that, the prior 3 decades, we saw rents drastically outpacing people's incomes, right? We saw, and there is nothing that would prevent that from happening again. Now, we can shape a policy in the image of Minneapolis. We can have a reasoned, rational, and well-researched conversation, and we should. And we should pass a policy that allows people to stay in their homes and that doesn't subject us to sort of the whims of the marketplace, because that displaces people. And I want to see North Minneapolis thrive, and I don't want to see people in my community displaced as we're starting to create amenities for them.
Thank you. I'm going to try to combine a couple of questions here, and I'll let you try to figure out how to put them all together in an answer. The housing issue, many homeowners have been hit with increased property taxes, and public housing managers and owners have not always been accountable for maintenance and safety and health of their residents. And as a council member, would you support rezoning vacant lots to make more multifamily and affordable housing, so finding more places for housing? So the general question is, what plan do you have to address the complex housing crisis that's disproportionately impacting the north side? What are your priorities, and how will you be successful in implementing them? And we begin with Mr. Peterson.
That's a pretty tough question. Rezoning to allow for more homes sounds like it should work, or it would be more ideal. Again, this is where I would say my little bit of inexperience comes in. but I would be looking to because the homeless situation is so bad. I know there has to be a way to use buildings that aren't being used. I guess that would be rezoning. There's so many of these empty places where nothing's going on. There's no construction. Building some not low income but moderately income housing structures and or apartment buildings, and even seeing some homes people who may want to renovate or turn a lot into a duplex. Anything that helps curtail homelessness, anything that helps make sure that people have a roof over their head and are provided with that type of safety. If it's intelligent, I'm with it. I just need to learn a little bit more to teach that.
Thank you. Mr. Ellison?
Yeah, I could talk about rental or ownership on this, but I'm going to stick with ownership because we just got done talking about rent control. And I think that absolutely, we did do the work of upzoning a majority of the city, all of the city, across the board. And what we're seeing is with that new construction, we're allowing folks and we're giving folks an opportunity, especially in the instances when they own, to build generational wealth. Just the other day, I went to a ribbon cutting for a home for a formerly homeless veteran who not only is now going to own his own home after experiencing homelessness with him and his family, but he also has an ADU in the back that he can rent out and generate income. And as a matter of fact, without that ADU, I don't know that he'd be able to own that home himself. Right? And so this is what I mean when we're saying that we are generating wealth for people, because you might be in a position where you can't own a single family home, but because of the secondary, because of the rent and all that stuff, you could potentially own a duplex. I think that some of the reason we've seen rents be able to at least become manageable in the last 2 years, and only the last 2 years, is because, partially because of the pandemic, but I think partially because it could be attributed to the fact that folks are able to generate wealth and because we're building more units on these vacant lots. And the last thing I'll say is when I got in office, we had, I think, almost approaching 700 lots, vacant lots in North Minneapolis. We've cut that number in half. And so I think that that's also something that we need to highlight and contributing to people being able to own and stay in this neighborhood.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez?
Just a couple of things. We mentioned here that every area is going to have a housing rent control kind of different, and we just mentioned right now that the property taxes are going up 5 to 6%. Yet right now we have the conversation at City Hall that wants to put that at 3% rent cap. Think about that. How would that work? For 2-3 years, property taxes going up 5-6%, but yet you want the rent increase to be at 3%. It doesn't work. The math does not work in our city. Now let me tell you something. Public housing, rezoning, we've done that, and I agree with my council member on that as well. But here's the reality: is things like ADU, for those that don't know what that is basically putting like your garage, making it into an apartment or something like that. It doesn't work because it costs too much. You can't get the rent out of it. Many people want to do it in our community. We fought for it when I was on the NERC board, but it does not work. We have to subsidize that to make it work. It's way too expensive. So I'm pragmatic, and that's what I believe in, and that's what I want to do. The numbers don't add up to me, but if you want to see what's going on with our housing stock, just drive down Lindale Avenue, right in front of the park over there, and you'll see how many houses boarded up, how many beautiful homes just decaying, and you'll see part of our problem with accountability in our city, with knowing what's going on. Just go back in that part between Lindale and the freeway, and you'll see we have a big housing problem. We're putting brand new houses up, but right next to that is decaying, naturally affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. The next questions are centered around neighborhood support and welfare. And the first one is, excuse me, do you see the neighborhood associations and councils benefiting your ward, and why or why not? And how would you address neighborhood association funding? And we begin with Mr. Ellison.
I think that we have a lot of neighborhood groups who do tremendous amount of work, especially in North Minneapolis. Historically, though, we've also seen a lot of neighborhood groups be exclusive to the neighborhoods that they serve. And so we have we spent the last, I think, 2 or 3 years, I mean, obviously the conversation goes much further than that, but we spent some years trying to reform what it looks like to fund these neighborhoods. They are independent nonprofits, a lot of them, so they could seek funding elsewhere, but I think that the base funding that they get from the city is something that we're trying to figure out what's a good balance there. And how do we make sure that organizations that are representative of the communities that they serve can get increased funding, can get access to increased funding. And so I think that we're figuring it out. The mayor has proposed to increase base funding for neighborhoods next year. I'm supportive of that. I know that a lot of my colleagues are interested in making sure that those incentives get it to a point where neighborhoods can actually operate and be functional. And so as far as what folks should be doing, I think that the neighborhoods have, especially the ones that are doing well and are representative of their of the neighborhoods they serve, are they know what the needs are, right? They know whether it's rental assistance, whether it's down payment assistance for a home buyer. They know what those things are, and so I really want to make sure that that's a collaborative effort, and not be too not dictate to the neighborhoods what they need to spend their money on, but work with them in figuring out where are they seeing the greatest need.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez.
So I'll say this. Our council member says we need to figure it out. I think we already figured it out. And this coming from someone, I've been on the NERC board I was on the NERC board for about 7 years. The organization was around for 40 years. And we recruited an awesome executive director, and I'm not saying it because I want her vote, but I'm saying that we brought in good people to represent the community, because for many years it wasn't happening. Because there are organizations, neighborhood organizations, that get money from the city that do a very bad job. We had the big fiasco over in the Camden area where the lady was the ED for 20 years, and she was a really mean person. And nobody, no city council member, nobody came down on them, and that is not okay. I think accountability is super important, and neighborhood organizations must do a good job. I believe in neighborhood organizations, but I believe in accountability. And I recruited, I believe. So when someone in the neighborhood says, oh, my organization in my neighborhood is not doing a good job, I say, hey, how do I help you get on that board so we can change things around? That's what I believe in terms of accountability. We have already figured it out. There needs to be accountability. I've talked to people in the city. They say, we know this organization, this neighborhood organization is getting $100,000 from us, and we know they're doing a really bad job. And what are you going to do about it? And crickets. Not me. I will speak up. I will point it out. It's not okay. And that's what you get out of me. You get accountability, 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
Being a resident of the North Side and actually living on the same block as an RRC, I think they're a valuable tool. I think they could use more help. Just like any of these neighborhood, any of the assistance, even at the guys down at the Cub, the violence stoppers. But there needs to be oversight. If you're going to be receiving money from the state to do your thing, to pay people, to be out, you need to have oversight. You need to be scrutinized. And situations where Mr. Martinez is at the pool and he has to do something because these guys aren't doing anything, and that's paramount to ridiculousness. If you're there to serve the neighborhood and you're not in that capacity, but you're receiving funds, that's theft. That's fraud. So there needs to be strict oversight. Not just saying, hey, you're doing that wrong, but like, hey, assembling a group of individuals who look at what you've done and possibly do audits, because that money doesn't come from anywhere. That comes from tax-paying citizens.
Okay, thank you. The next question. Thinking of the Blue Line Extension Project as an opportunity to bring investment and benefits to our part of the city and our neighbors, in your opinion, what policies and investments would you prioritize today? Please name one or two to ensure long-term residents can benefit directly and enjoy having reliable transportation available to us. And we begin with Mr. Martinez.
real simple. Business, business, business. We're losing it. We're losing it real fast. And the business that we have left on the corridor, we need to make sure that the businesses that are an asset to the community, those that have relationships in the community, those that take care of their properties, those that care about the people that they serve, we need to make sure as a city, to when the light rail goes in, they're not hurt by it. In other words, we need to let them have parking. Right? Our city right now wants to get rid of parking and make it hard for people to drive around. It literally says that on the 2040 plan. So whenever you get frustrated about driving around, just know it's on purpose. But we need to make sure these businesses we want them to survive. We only got a good handful of them. If you want them to stay around, the city needs to do their part, put their money where their mouth is, give spots that are the better for them, because the light rail is going to take away some of the parking. And so we got to make sure that the good businesses that we have, a Tito's, a Wilson's Image, the barbershop with Lisa's Place, like these places that are really respecting the community and our asset, they need to be priority. They need to be at the front of the line when it comes to bringing development on Broadway. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot. I'm from an area of the United States that has a pretty awesome subway. It's clean, it's quiet, you have to pay to get on. Price increases as you go further out, but the paramount thing is it's clean, it's safe, it's quiet. When I moved to this state, I didn't pay for the light rail for 2 years because I didn't know you had to pay, because there are no turnstiles. There's no one at the stations to make sure that people are safe, that it's quiet and or it's clean. It's pretty dirty, it's pretty scary. I don't ride the light rail. Even if I wouldn't, I'd rather walk. So with that being said, this new Blue Line proposal, well, not real proposal because it's already going on. I know that it's going to affect where people live. Some people are going to lose their homes. And businesses could possibly come, maybe if we redesign how you can enter the light rail. Like, I would want to put in turnstiles. I would want the enclosure to be, I would want the stations to be slightly enclosed with a dedicated officer there, not just on the train flipping around, but there. But then again, we need more officers. But that light rail, no.
Mr. Ellison?
Yes, thank you for the question. So, I don't want anybody to walk away from here feeling disempowered. It's absolutely a proposal, right? And as the people in Lynn Park will tell you, if you want the route to change, if you've got a demand for the project team, which is not the city has a role, I'll explain that in a second, but you've got a voice there. And I'll advocate for you, and I've been going to those meetings for years, and we have seen changes along the route. The main thing that I think is going to need to happen in order for the route to work, the Blue Line route, is there's going to need to be anti-displacement policy in effect. That means that the project team is going to have to do something. I know that the city, myself and the mayor, I know residents are pushing the project team to do something that they've never done before, which is invest in anti-displacement ahead of time. That means site control. That means certain policies to make sure that folks don't get displaced from their housing. And so I think that there is a proposal. They've hired a team at Cura. Northsiders were on that team to propose 17 different anti-displacement policies. I support all of them. But the ones that I think are going to be the most important are the disposition policy. That means the amount of money we're putting into buying up those buildings so that the Northside residents can have control over the site. Right, it can have control over development around the train, and the other is around anti-displacement policy for renters and residents. I think that if the train is going to displace people, we obviously don't need it, but it is valuable infrastructure, and it will serve people as long as we can answer the displacement question. I think we can.
Thank you. All right, the next question, we had several questions on this topic, so I will ask one of them and know that this is an important one to the people in the audience. As a city council member, how will you prioritize and respond to constituent feedback, concerns, and requests in a timely way? This includes email, phone calls, letters, and in-person communications. And we begin with Mr. Peterson.
I'm going to tackle that, but I want to jump on this real quick. It was the last part of this light rail thing. I don't understand why it's not being proposed to be raised or even put on the ground. But that's beside the point. That should be looked at to help curtail or even stop any type of displacement. But oh man, I've been in customer service for, I don't even know. I'm a part-time worker at Lunds and Barley downtown in the bakery. I love it. If you come down, I'll bake you fresh bread. I'll bake you fresh croissants. If you're looking for toe cream, I'll take you to where it is too, or strawberries. But I'm a very like hands-on, in your face, in person type of guy. So like on the telephone, yeah, I'll call you at awkward hours. No, I wouldn't do that. But open for telephone conversation all the time. Zoom, email. We have the future in our pockets. So like that cell phone is like, it's my communicator, like Captain Kirk. So beam me up, Scotty, anytime you need it. But definitely on foot. I like talking to people and shaking hands and talking about my interests, but like talking about your concerns. So let's do that. You'll see a lot of me.
Okay. Mr. Ellison?
Thank you for the question. North Minneapolis, especially Ward 5, is not similar to any other ward in the city. We're an incredible neighborhood. We're an incredible part of the community. We also have a deep level of need here. When I first got into office, we had some of the least amount of folks reaching out to the office. And my office, we've increased that number because we know that that's how things get done. The city has what's called a complaint-based system. We want to hear from you. But in hearing from folks, that means that when that number goes up, it can be difficult, and I know that I can improve in getting back to people, and I have improved in getting back to people. And so while I take every single criticism at face value and I accept it, I also want to tell you things that we've done that folks in the seat have not been able to do before. One of those things is that we have weekly open office hours where we have contacted thousands of residents. Via that method. I've done it every single Monday, and I used to do it every single Saturday for years, 6 years in office. We have a bi-weekly newsletter that's a first of its kind. Every other ward office does it. Ward 5 should have it. We do now. And we do quarterly meetings to make sure that the pandemic slowed that down a bit, but we do quarterly meetings to make sure that folks have a way that they can come and platform us and see the office. One of the other things that I've started to do is make sure that we're instituting a call time, basic call time. We are resolving more constituent services than in the past. Does that mean that we are meeting the need? No, but we are improving that service here in Ward 5, and I will continue to.
Okay, thank you so much for all of your...
I haven't responded.
Mr. Martinez.
Prioritize constituent feedback. Two things. Number one, care about what they say, and number two, respond back. And I appreciate our current council member saying that, because that's been an issue for 6 years. 6 years to learn to respond back to constituents. And again, I have a website, a challenge. Email me email me, see who gets back to you, or if at all. But here's the thing, guys. Just a few years ago, and this is when I decided to run that the first time, is when our council member was trying to put in a 2-day shelter here in our Willard Park down the block here.
That's actually a lie.
The community came out, over 95% were against it, and we let our council member know. But he scolded the community, and he still went ahead with the proposal. You guys have had the same issue here with a development coming up here. From what I've heard, is the majority of the people here in this neighborhood were not supportive of it, but our council member still pushes this forward. So I don't know if we even value constituents' responses or what they actually say. If we already know better, or if we're going to have higher, we know better than you, then I don't see how that's going to change with what we have now. I commit, as a council member, I am not in control of the neighborhoods. You are in control, and I will listen to you, and I will respond back to you. Tested now. I get emails all the time. I respond back within even 10 minutes. Sometimes they're like, wow, that's never happened to me before, and I've emailed my council member many times. I have a family. I'm just as busy as anybody else on this block, but you can make it happen. You have 2 full staff as a council member, and you get pretty good money as a council member, so I think I would do a good job for you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we've come to the end of the questions, and we have climate, environment, and some more city government and some general questions. So thank you for all of your good questions, and I just encourage you to ask those questions on your own of the candidates. Your last closing remarks tonight, I would like you to include something just as a honor of this beautiful summer night. If you could tell us whatever you have planned for your closing remarks, but also include one quick memory of something that you enjoyed doing in the summer as a child.
Is that part of the 1 minute?
That could be part of your 1 minute and 10 seconds. How's that? And we begin with Mr. Ellison.
Love this question. First thing I want to say is that when I say that we've been improving constituent services, I want to say we've been solving more constituent service cases from my first month in office, and we'll continue to improve. But anything else, this notion that it's taken that long to succeed on that realm is a lie. I also want to say that that project that I supposedly pushed through, it was a county project and it did not happen. And so I think that we ought to tell the truth up on the stage, and it's hard to push forward without acknowledging that. But the other thing that I think is really important is that you elect somebody who actually likes this community, that sees the brilliance in this community, that doesn't look at you and only see problems. I see the creativity in this community, I see the ingenuity in this community, and I love this community. And I'm going to continue loving this community, whether, win or lose, but I'm born and raised here, and I know I didn't get to the summer activity, but I want to thank you all for your time today.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Martinez?
When we're talking about lies, the reason that project didn't go through because Irene Fernando listened to the community and she pulled it off the table. That's why it didn't go on over there.
It was a county
Thank
project.
you. And so let me tell you something.
She's the county commissioner.
The school board was trying to get it for $1 for like 20 years. We know this because through NERC, we dealt with this through NERC. They told us one story, and then when it came out, it was a different story. And our council member was part of the organizing that strategy. And so that is true. I was part of that conversation. That was actually the moment I decided to run the first time, because I figured as a council member, our job is to listen to you and what the majority of you want. That's what I would do. That's what I commit to. And what I would do for fun this year is go and knock some doors and talk to you at your door with my kids and try to make it fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
Oh, okay. My favorite summertime activity is swimming. I love to swim. Either going to the lakes out here or going to the pool or going to I'm from Virginia, so I'm in King's Dominion and Wild World and stuff like that. But I do love this community. I love it very much. It reminds me of home. It reminds me of new possibilities. But as Jeremiah said, ingenuity comes from the community, and I believe I'm ingenuitous. Like a lot of positive things come out of the community. I want to say that I'm one of them, and I just want to serve you, like in the most purest and completest fashion. Like I want to get stuff done. And I will retire my sword as the sword guy if elected.
Thank you. On behalf of all of the co-sponsors, I want to thank the candidates for Ward 5 City Council for being part of the democratic process by running for office and for being willing to serve your community. We hope the forum has helped you, the audience, both live and on YouTube, to make a more informed decision. There's never enough time to cover all the issues, and if you feel you have questions, please feel free to contact each of the candidates individually. Many thanks to the Minneapolis Park and Recreation and to MCN for their recording of this forum and for providing this space. The unedited studio and video recording of this forum will be available for viewing on the League of Women Voters website, lwvmpls.org. Recordings may not be edited by the candidates or the public or used as partisan purposes. Early voting begins September 22nd. You can go to 980 Hennepin Avenue East during regular business hours until November 6th. Election Day is Tuesday, November 7th, and you may request and vote by absentee ballot before that. In Minneapolis, all 13 city council wards are open, and you will have the city council race only for your ward on your ballot. To check if you are registered to vote, to register to vote, to check the polling place, and/or to apply for an absentee ballot, visit mnvotes.gov or vote411.org. Volunteers are here tonight to help you register if you have not been or have not registered yet, and also to explain ranked choice voting if you would like a primer on that. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for being a great audience and following by our rules of being quiet and listening carefully. And thank you to our candidates. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, good to meet you.